I'm here today to tell you about my brother's experience. My brother who destroyed himself and destroyed us along with him. And all of this for a reason no one could ever imagine. Let me introduce myself. I'm Yunus. I have a twin brother named Yusuf. I am now 21 years old. But anyone who sees me thinks I'm older than I actually am. That's obviously because of all the burdens I've carried in my life. I'm telling you this story today so you can learn from it, so that no one ever falls into what my brother fell into. Ever since we were born, we have been fatherless. Our mother was the one raising us all by herself. She did everything in her power to help us succeed. When I entered middle school, I decided to start working. This was to help her out at home. But quite the opposite, my brother Yusuf had no sense of responsibility. He never even tried to work to help our mother. One day when I advised him to get any job to cover his expenses, he told me, "Look here, Yunus, each of us can get money the way that suits him. As long as I don't beg from anyone or burden anyone, then no one should care whether I work or not." What do you mean by that, Yusuf? And where exactly will you get money from, genius, when you don't work or even have the desire to? I'm telling you this because I want what's best for you. And so you can help Mom with the expenses because it's unfair for her to carry this load alone. By the way, I told you I know how to get money in my own way. Thank God I don't do anything shameful or forbidden. I'm speaking to you reasonably for the second time. Mind your own business and keep your advice to yourself. I was bothered by what my brother said. That's because he never made me feel like we were twins. On the contrary, he always thought he was right and I was wrong. Since he was little, he was always mysterious and hid many things from me. Not to mention, he loved sitting alone, especially in the dark. I remember one day when we were little, we were about 5 years old. My brother went into the guest room and locked the door behind him. He stayed in the dark for about 4 hours. And during that time, poor Mom had turned the world upside down looking for him. Later, when she entered the room, she told me what happened. She said when she walked in, she found him sitting with his eyes closed. He was very calm, not crying or scared like any child would be in that situation. She asked him, "What brought you here, my dear?" He replied saying that when he entered the room, the door locked and he couldn't open it again. My mother was shocked and couldn't figure out what was on his mind back then, because he didn't knock for someone to let him out, nor did he cry or scream for us to hear. That means that he wasn't afraid at all. Yusuf was strange from a young age. No one understood how his mind worked. Unlike me, who was a bit of a fearful child, the slightest thing out of the ordinary would frighten me. We grew up and our personalities developed. But as we got older, I kept saying I wish we had stayed little kids. At least then, what happened to Yusuf later wouldn't have happened. While I was working at the supermarket to earn money to support myself, I noticed that my brother Yusuf had much more money than I did, even though I never saw him working or even leaving the house in front of us. He would lead me to believe that he worked after school, but he wouldn't tell me any details about this job. Then he warned me not to say anything to Mom. Even though I didn't know what his job was, I saw that his money never ran out. He didn't even need money from Mom. I was curious to know what kind of work brought him all that money, but I couldn't figure anything out. One day, I woke up at night to go to the bathroom. As I was walking down the hallway, I heard a very strange sound coming from my brother's room. I also saw a red light coming from his room. I got close to the door and tried to hear what was being said, but the sound got louder the closer I got. My brother was playing a video on his phone. He was sitting there, focused and absorbed in it. I knew this when I opened the door slowly without him noticing me. There were very strange things all around him. I didn't know exactly what they were, so I thought maybe he was watching a horror movie or listening to something. Closed the door quietly, and I walked away quickly from in front of my brother's room. That was so he wouldn't feel that I was standing there watching him. But that day I had a strange dream. I didn't understand what it meant exactly. I dreamt I was in a very dark place and it looked awful. I heard the voices of many people screaming around me. And I saw my brother, walking on a path covered with skulls on the ground. A path that had no end. It looked scary and ominous. I kept calling out to my brother in the dream, but he couldn't hear me or even see me. Until I found a strange person appearing on the path. An old man, and he looked terrifying. He had a white beard and messy hair. I saw him grab my brother by the hand to take him away, and he walked with him on that same long path. I kept running after them until I was out of breath. Then I woke up to the sound of my own loud breathing as I painted. At that moment I found myself sweating and my face was soaked. I went and stood in front of the mirror to see how I looked. And I looked like I had just finished a marathon. I didn't understand the meaning of that dream, nor did I know what my brother was going through that he was hiding from me. But I told myself I would definitely find out and discover everything myself. In the name of God and with His blessing, let's start the episode. In the name of God, this episode is a new story and a new experience from the series of listener experiences and tales. Your own tales. Let's start today's episode and say, in the name of God. It stayed like that until the day came when everything was revealed to me. I found out the hidden truth. This happened when Yusuf was asleep. It was clear that he had pulled an all-nighter the day before. That's why he was sleepy and didn't notice a thing. I entered his room. Luckily, he had forgotten to lock the door behind him that day as he usually did. I opened the door and crept inside so he wouldn't sense me. I found strange tools next to him that I'd never seen in our house before. These items were incense, folded papers, and a small wooden box. I also found a key and a pack of cigarettes. I was shocked because I suspected my brother was the one smoking them, even though he didn't seem like the type and I'd never once caught him at it. But I had no other explanation for it. I was puzzled by the rest of the things in his room. Before I could leave, I heard a phone ringing. It was my brother Yusuf's phone. That's because his phone was on the charger next to him. The phone that was ringing was inside the wardrobe. So I approached the wardrobe and opened it. I was shocked to find he had a new phone with him. None of us knew anything about it. But I didn't let on that I had discovered all this. I left the room and closed the door behind me. That was so Yusuf wouldn't realize I had been in there. That same night, I decided to stay awake and see what Yusuf was doing. I was in middle school at the time, meaning we were about 15 years old. But my thinking and mind were like an adult. I followed Yusuf at night when I saw him leaving the house, sneaking and looking behind him to make sure no one, like me or my mother, woke up. I kept following him until I saw him heading toward the cemetery. I was surprised and told myself, where's he going? Is it possible he's heading to the cemetery at this late hour of the night? Why on earth is he going there? No, I have to go and see what's drawing him there. I decided to follow him to find out what he was hiding from us. I was shocked when I actually saw him entering the cemetery. He went to an old house there that was near an abandoned tomb. The house looked very old, and the path to it was frightening. I stood there hesitating, not knowing whether to continue and enter the house or not. But in the end, I decided to go in, and said, whatever happens, happens. I entered the house after use. The entrance was dark and very narrow. I felt like I was having trouble breathing the moment I stepped into that strange house. I stood to the side so Yusuf wouldn't notice me. After a while, I heard shouting coming from inside. It was a man's voice talking to my brother Yusuf, but he was speaking to him in a nasty way. He was yelling and saying to him, "You're hopeless. How long will you remain a coward making excuses every time you say you have a problem? I don't believe your nonsense anymore." My brother Yusuf replied with a trembling voice, "I swear to God I'm not making excuses. I really didn't know how to do what you told me to do last time. Besides, I've been doing everything you've asked of me. Why, when I do something wrong or forget even the smallest thing, do you never let it slide? Because you're stupid and don't follow my instructions exactly as I say. And now go ahead and do what we agreed upon. Otherwise everything will be ruined and the whole job will fall apart." I heard my brother Yusuf's voice shaking as if he were being forced against his will. He told him then, "All right, I'll do what you asked of me." He said that and left. I quickly hid behind the nearest door I could find. It was the door to a strange-looking room. It was the only thing in front of me, and I said to myself, "Hide before Yusuf notices you're here." The room I was standing in had some very foul odors. There were pictures of so many people hanging on the wall. I didn't know who these people were, or if they were still alive or dead. I couldn't focus on anything other than finding a way out of that place and to track Yusuf, to see exactly where he was going and what he intended to do next. I saw him leaving that strange man's house and heading toward the cemetery. I wanted to grab his arm and confront him and let him know I figured out he was working with that charlatan-looking man. But I told myself, let me follow him until I know what he's hiding. At that moment, Yusuf went to the cemetery. I found him opening a grave, digging with something very strange. It looked like a shovel. I didn't understand why he was doing that. I watched him, filled with fear and confusion about what was to come. I felt as if he were forced to do what he was doing. His expression showed he wasn't happy with his actions, but I didn't understand what could have forced him to do such a thing. When Yusuf finished digging in the grave he had opened, he buried something he had in his pocket. It looked like something wrapped in paper. And after he finished, he closed the grave and went back as if nothing happened. I followed him, keeping track of his movements until he returned to that same man. And then he said to him, "I have finished what was required, but I want to tell you that I won't continue this work anymore. I'm truly disgusted with myself, and I'm tired. I can no longer bear to look at myself in the mirror. Not to mention that with what we're doing, we're definitely hurting so many people." When Yusuf said that, the man yelled at him, and I saw a fire flare up from the torch that was in front of him. He said then, "Are you also saying you won't continue this work? You've ruined half the job because of your stupidity, and now you want to quit? Enough. Since when we, Mr. Yusuf, are you saying we're hurting others? People do this to each other. We are just the tool, the instrument that executes. We aren't doing anything outside of reality. They would do it with or without us." I understand what you mean clearly. I understand that you're saying people are the ones who come to you to request acts against each other, because none of them even love each other anymore. But I will not participate in what we are doing. I never imagined that this charlatan would get so angry and threaten my brother, saying, "Let's see what you're actually going to do, Yusuf. You want me to believe you're quitting after you've had your fill and made your money? I'm never going to let you walk away as easily as you think. And if you do what you say, then you've brought this on yourself, my friend. Me? I've been having nightmares every single night. I can't even get a few hours of sleep, the sleep that any human being should normally get. And this smell of incense is starting to suffocate me. I'm forced to follow these stupid rituals you've taught me just to keep the work going. But I can't focus on anything anymore. I can't even live my life normally." And you think my problem is just about keeping the work running? Or are you just acting up now that you have some money? Finish what we started, Yusuf. Otherwise, the whole temple will come crashing down on your head. It was the first time I felt my brother was threatened by something he might not actually escape. I didn't understand what got him into this business or why he was on such a path. But I hurried back home that day before my brother arrived, so he wouldn't suspect anything strange. I didn't know what to do about what I had heard. And see, should I confront Yusuf and show him he's wrong or tell my mother? I couldn't sleep that night. I felt like someone tied up, unable to do a thing. That night I had a terrible dream. I dreamed my brother was walking on a broken path with light all around him. Every step he took, the ground would vanish beneath his feet, leaving only empty space. And at the end of the dream, I saw him fall into a massive pit of fire. I kept screaming, trying to save him, but I couldn't. I woke up to the sound of my own screams, truly terrified. After that dream, I decided to help my brother and make him quit this work. That night, I said I had to end it all so he wouldn't get into more trouble or be threatened again. I put a sleeping pill in my brother's shoes so he would sleep and not wake up at night. And I decided I would go to the charlatan. I would deal with him myself. He really fell asleep and couldn't get up for his usual nightly meeting. As for me, I put on some of my brother's clothes using our striking resemblance. By the way, my brother and I were identical twins, to the point that even my mother would sometimes mix us up. Anyway, to make a long story short, I went to the charlatan whose name I learned was Mohsin. I found that out when I unlocked my brother's phone, saw his number saved. I went to his house, stood before him, and said with confidence, "Look, I'm not doing this work with you anymore. Whatever you do, I'm not afraid of you anymore. You're just a human like me, which means you're weak. You can't do anything as long as God is with me. People like you are too weak to do anything that could threaten or harm those in front of you." When I said those words to him, I saw him get very angry and he said, "Do you really think you can get away from me? No, you must be dreaming. Anyway, do whatever you think is right. But don't come crying later regretting what I'm about to do." Me too. I felt at that moment that this man named Mohsin was up to no good at all. So I decided to seek help from someone who could get us out of this mess. I wanted to save my brother from the trouble he was in. He was in it himself, but unfortunately I was too late. Because after that day, I lost my brother forever. The next day, my brother went to see that charlatan Mohsin. God knows if he intended to continue working with him or if it was his last day and he was going to quit. But what I learned was that my brother never came back after that day. He disappeared from the house and my mother and I were going crazy with worry. Mentally, of course, I had to tell her everything I knew. At that moment, she kept blaming me for staying silent and not speaking up. She told me that what I did made me the reason for my brother's disappearance. And when we reported what happened to the police, they acted quickly to look into the matter. But unfortunately, Mohsin had already fled the country. No one knew where he went. To the point that people doubted if that was even his real name. Mohsin. They said it must have been an alias. A name to hide behind so he could do whatever he wanted and take money from people under the guise of sorcery. And unfortunately, my brother became a victim of a con artist like that. Someone who doesn't fear God, and all he cares about is money. And when my brother decided not to continue on that path with him, he got rid of him. God only knows where. At that time, I remembered the dream I had before I even knew who my brother was working with or the truth of the story. The dream where I saw my brother being dragged by his hand, going with a strange man I didn't know. It turns out that man was Mohsin, the con artist, who exploited his weakness and need for money and took him down that path. One day, while I was sleeping at night, I dreamed of my brother coming to me and crying out for my help. I saw him standing in front of a grave, and it was as if that grave looked like a well. It was very deep, like a bottomless pit, and he was gesturing to me. But when I got close to him, I heard him speak. He said to me with tears filling his eyes, "I know that I am no longer with you all now. You used to advise me to focus on my studies, to find work that would bring me money to help us. not something that would ruin me. But unfortunately, I took the easy path of forbidden things. A path that led me to the worst and most horrific end anyone could imagine. But I want you to forgive me. And I want you to make Mom forgive me too. I wanted to scold him and blame him in the dream, and ask him why he did that. But before I could speak or say anything, I saw my brother move and signal me to go with him. He kept walking until he reached the end of the cemetery. These are the exact same graves where my brother used to bury the spells, or the papers he used to place there. I saw him, and then he suddenly vanished. I woke up from the dream right then. That night, I couldn't sleep. I was so consumed by thoughts of my brother and grief for him. The next morning, I decided to go to the same graveyard I had visited before while I was looking for my brother. I walked the same path I saw in my dream. I went until I reached the grave he was standing in front of. That's when I felt that the grave looked new. The cement on it looked like it had been done recently. Before I could do anything, I felt movement behind me. It was the sound of someone's footsteps approaching. When I looked back, I found the graveyard guard standing in front of me. He was looking at me in surprise. He asked me then, "Who are you and what are you doing here?" I know I could tell you my story and you wouldn't believe it. But my brother went missing. We didn't know where he went. And his story is quite something. I saw him come to me in a dream. He was calling out for my help. He is definitely here in this place. The man looked at me in a way that said he didn't believe me. His gaze was full of doubt and surprise. He said while pulling me to get me out of the graveyard, "Just leave here now and go tell this to someone else." Do you think I'd believe these words? It looks like you're here to do your own deed. Burying spells are something easy like those we hear about. The world isn't safe anymore. I pleaded with him, "For God's sake, please let me tell you my story. Maybe you'll believe me and help me. My mother hasn't been sleeping from how sad she is for my brother. Besides, not everyone is like what you're saying. I'm truly hurting, and I want to get justice for my brother." The man didn't understand me, but I told him exactly what happened with my brother in detail, and I told him about the charlatan named Mohsen. After he understood my words, he said, "Oh, I see. I understand now. So your brother is gone on a one-way trip, never to return. I can help you. But you must report it to the police first and tell them about what you're talking about. Because if it's proven that he is really buried here, then the case will be reopened and they will investigate it and..." I thanked him because he was going to help me. And we actually searched the grave my brother was standing in front of in the dream. And unfortunately, I found my brother actually buried before me wearing the same clothes. As soon as I saw him like that, I collapsed. It had been since the day he left home that we knew nothing about him. I learned later from the police that they had caught the fraudulent charlatan named Mohsen, and he confessed and said everything. He said that lately my brother's conscience had awakened. He didn't want to carry out the work or do what was agreed upon anymore. That's why they got the first person they had to finish him off. Afterward, they buried him in the same grave he used to bury the spells in. The terrible thing is that Mohsen spoke without feeling guilty for even a single moment, as if walking this path made his conscience die. He was a person of tyranny beyond limits. But thank God my brother's justice was served. After saying his words to the prosecutor, he was sent to trial, and he got the punishment he deserved. Someone like Mohsen doesn't deserve to live or even be among us. But unfortunately, my brother fell victim to someone like him. Someone who cares for nothing but money. He exploited my brother's need for money in his young age, and he played on that point. To this day, I can't get over what happened to my brother. Pray for us that God gives patience to me and my mother, and eases the pain of losing Yusuf. And so ends today's episode and today's story and experience. You have the right, my friend, to believe or disbelieve all or part of the episode. For these are the listener's experiences, your own stories. I thank writer Amani Walid for writing the episode in the broadcast format you just heard. I also thank writer Lizzie Zagalou for preparing all the episodes of the General Horror program. Finally, I thank Mustafa El-Masri for the sound effects and music. And I thank you all for listening. If you are new to the channel, please don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell to receive all that's new. And if you are among those who like to support me, please don't forget to like, comment, and share. And thank you very much. You were with Muhammad Gwili and the General of Horror program. Peace be upon you.